You want to go through you want to go through the process with eyes wide open as much as you can. So it's about getting the information at the best times to be able to equip yourself. Builders
Mm,
don't want to be doing quotes willy nilly because when things change all the time, which is why I think it's so important to be really thorough with the brief and get the design to a concept that's been thought through thoroughly. I
yeah.
find people that either tackle it by themselves or sort of rush designers or rush builders into the process are only shooting themselves in the foot, because if you've not given that thought, that's when you're going to see the changes come up later as you're
Mm.
realizing things.
Thinking about building or renovating? Or maybe you are already knee-deep in a project now. Are you feeling unsure of which steps to take and if you are making the right calls? You're not alone. Welcome to Builders Beyond Borders, the podcast where experienced Aussie builders share real stories, insider tips, and practical advice so you can build with confidence, avoid costly mistakes, and actually enjoy the journey. Let's dive in.
Bronwyn, thanks so much for joining us today. So, on our podcast, this is Builders Beyond Borders, which is here to educate homeowners and other tradespeople on how people build and design and what the best methods are. And it's all around Australia. So, today we've got Hugh joining us, and he's from New Realm Homestead in Victoria. And yeah, typically we've got other builders from New South Wales, Queensland, and Tassie as well. But yeah, we've got with Hugh today and myself, Louise, from Power Construction Services here in WA. So Bronwyn, welcome. We just to give everybody some background, we love working with Bronwyn. She is our experienced residential design specialist, and so we use Bronwyn with on some of our jobs for the design aspect and also the interior design aspect. So, Bronwyn, I'm not going to do any further. Let you introduce yourself and tell us about Bronwyn and Bronz DC and how you got into the industry. And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thank you for having me on your pod. Very exciting and lovely to meet you, Hugh. How did I get into the industry? I've always had a thing for design. I actually many moons ago was at a crossroad, and it was, do I do design or do I go into mining? Which of course in WA, big mining state, and the money carrot got dangled and I ended up going down the path of FIFO. But while I was doing that, I just got an itch to want to come back into design. So I actually started studying interior design while I was working away. And then when the time came to leave that industry and choose something city based, I actually was living in Adelaide at the time, and just thought, well, I'm strong in sales. I'm going to go work for a home builder and do that just to sort of, bridge the gap between the FIFO wage and coming back and doing some form of study. And as I was working for that builder, they were in the project builder space, but they also did energy efficient homes, which meant that we had to redesign a lot of the homes to obviously get the best performance out of the home. And in that process, I really enjoyed actually sort of the construction and learning the methodology behind building and obviously energy efficient principles. And so that led me down the path of going into building design and actually doing qualifications in building design as well. So once I sort of had the dual discipline going on, I then finished up working for that builder and wanting to go into sort of the renovation space, and was very fortunate to land working with a really reputable renovation builder in Adelaide who I just learned so much in that position. I did that for a handful of years, and then COVID happened, and then it was time to come home. I always knew at some point I wanted to start my own business. And that was the time. So I sort of, took that 10 years of learnings, brought it back home with me, and then Bronz DC was born from that. So we've been operating now for, oh gosh, coming into our fourth year here in Perth. And as you know, Lou, I hunted you guys down before I even landed back in Perth. And so we were sort of, we, Louise thought I was stalking her husband, but I was just trying to get my foot in the door with some builders in Perth.
But
Came
I think
over.
yeah, and that I think it was because we aligned in our wanting to really help with clients and their vision and the education and informing them. I think that that's how you sort of find us first of all through that education in our socials, and then then that's where we did connect because of that alignment that you exactly had the same values and that you wanted to do for your clients as well. And that's where I think you too, you're like it's very similar what we all do, and that's why what this group is about. And this podcast is about education and helping people understand that building and design side of things. Oh, thanks. So yeah, thank you for finding
It
us.
was very apparent. It was very apparent from your messaging on across your marketing on social media that you were very client centric, and that just spoke to me because clients come first. It's their home. We need to do a good job of connecting and do them good service. And unfortunately, the industry, although it's getting much better, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, there is still a stigma with the industry and builders, and people are scared of being ripped off or taken advantage of, or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
yeah, certainly a value alignment there for sure.
Yeah, no, awesome. So thank you for that. So Bronwyn, tell us, I know that you're probably in the last even 4 years, and plus all of your experience beforehand. Tell us some things that you think that what like the mistakes that people are making in the design phase, and perhaps some things that they can do to avoid them.
I think at a really primitive level, the number one thing well, there's a couple of things, I guess. People are using trends or what society thinks is what you need to do as their answer. But design is so one, subjective, and two, individual. So, the family dynamic in one household, even if you had the exact same house, might be completely different in terms of what you need from the home versus someone that's got a completely different dynamic in their family. Different stages of life, different makeup of who's in the family. And that's assuming you're in the same house. But then, of course, you've got a completely different home as well, particularly in the renovation space, which is going to have its own kind of needs and requirements and work, required. So, it's easy to sort of listen to what society or friends and family think you should do. But at the end of the day, you need to come back in house and go, right, what do we need? And I find the other thing is that people jump into design solutions mode prematurely.
Mm,
Yes, we wanna get a design, but to be able to achieve a great design, one that's gonna last you for what you need now and what you need into the future, you really need to do, like, a bit of an audit on your lifestyle and also recognize what is it that we're doing now or how we're living now sort of as a byproduct of what our house currently offers and we've kind of grown accustomed to,
mhm,
versus how do we wanna be living? How does this look? If there was no limitations, what would that look like? And then let that set your wish list and your start to prioritize from there. Um,
yeah.
Only once you've done that audit are you now in a position to put together a design that's actually going to work for you now and into the future, I believe.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And like for us, one thing for us that we find that there's been a change in the industry, or just the way that building and design is approached, that it is a congruent team effort between builder, designer, and client. And we find that in since we've been probably working together, and just over the last few years, how we've changed in our process, having that team effort, that it doesn't keep, the design's not independent from the build, and it all is joined in, that's been a massive for people to avoid then some of those limitations that can come, and errors that come within in the build. Because we still see it, that homeowners will come to us with a design, and then they say, okay, now we want to price it and then build it, and then it's not feasible sometimes to either it's not within their budget, or number two, that the design has been too elaborate for what they actually need, and then we can't actually go and build it. So it's that disappointment then that comes with it, to say, oh well, actually now you need to go and redesign. So when the builder, the designer, and the client are all working together, then I feel that that's a really great solution on how to avoid some of those costly mistakes. And like that, what you've said then is, it's really thinking future also, that it's not just like what's in the now, what do we love about now? It's like really honing in on that why. Why are you
Mm.
doing this? Why are those what's the end goal in all of this? And then working with everybody then to get that best outcome. Hugh, what about you? How does it roll out for you and the design team over in Victoria?
Like you guys, collaboration is one of those things that is really pivotal to getting the best outcomes for our clients. But one of the things that actually came up recently, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this as well, but the one particular client who's a absolutely amazing client, had obviously they've got expectations, and they're there, and they're basically asking us to come up with with all the, or well, not come up with, but do all the work because they're not in that space. And so what it really shone a light on for me was the different languages that each different professional that we engage speaks, and how we sort of bring everybody together, and how we actually compile and collaborate with everybody, sort of like being the middleman. And I'm sure that Bronwyn, you've experienced this where you've designed something up for somebody, and then there's been that moment where, hey, look, we're going to need an engineer, or we're going to need energy raters, or whoever it
Mm.
may be. But when it comes to their particular role in things, if they're not collaborating with us, and then of course talking in the same language, people get confused so
Mm.
Mm.
easily.
Yep.
And this is where a lot of that separation, and where collaboration falls apart, it really happens in the industry. And this is something that I don't know. It came to me, and I'm like, there needs to be something spoken about this in particular, because there's so many different languages. How do we bring everyone together to be able to talk one language that is client centric?
Mm.
Mm.
How,
So
how
you're
how
yeah.
does that sort of speak to you?
So what you're saying, Hugh, is you're noticing nuances between the various professionals, let alone
Mm,
trying to communicate it to the client. We're all
mm,
speaking different versions of construction lingo.
yep.
Yeah, yeah, and then, state to state as well. I've coming over from Adelaide over to WA, I feel on some levels, I feel like I've been starting again because
Mm.
the Wild West over here, they do things a little bit differently. Some things a bit rough. And then you've got an
That's
influx
the
of
line.
builders that you've got, eastern states builders that are then coming over and bringing the lightweight game over here as well, which is I think is awesome for the industry. But it's different construction methods and, there's different sets of rules. I mean, I think about when we're choosing flooring, for example, for a client. Well, if it's a raft slab and it's a brick home, then the flooring selection might be different. If we've got a old 1920s bungalow and it's a old brick home on floor joists versus if we've got, a suspended concrete slab. So thinking about, not just what flooring type we're going to put down, but how does that impact, a skirting board's going to need to come off, or can we do it before or after the kitchen goes in? There's all these little things. But then within that, like what you're saying, Hugh, is there's different terminologies around
Mm.
even just like what people call hybrid flooring versus engineered flooring. And that's just one little component. You times that over the whole build and it becomes quite the shit show.
Mm, it does, and it's funny, like, even just in the design stage itself,
Yeah.
how many different languages we actually see when it comes to, like, speaking to an engineer. "Oh,
Yeah.
well, we've got to get a structural engineer," or, "Do we need a civil engineer? Do we
Mm.
need a traffic engineer?" Right? All these sorts of things come into it, and homeowners are getting confused, and this is where, you spoke before about the divide that can sort of come in, and the confusion that can come in, for homeowners, and when we're being client centric about how we're sort of communicating things across, it's those people that we find that are really struggling to understand, and they're scared and they're worried, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know if we can trust builders. We don't know if the stuff that's coming out of their mouth is actually true, and whether their business is sustainable." And they're doing all these great little things to sort of scare themselves into not making a decision on things. But how often do we actually have that honest truth, and someone that is going to be able to collaborate, and have all that communication come together, and then be able to put it out in layman's terms for an
Mm.
owner that is so
Mm.
easy to digest, and someone can actually feel, hey, hold on a second, they're actually thinking about us and what we actually need and how we're going to achieve it. How much work do we actually have to do in that space
Mm.
for the whole industry, and
Yeah.
for that recognition to actually come across, so that people can get that sense that, hey, we're doing good things, and we've met somebody in the industry that is actually going to be on our side.
That's it. That somebody's gonna,
Mhm.
like, literally put their arms around you
Mm,
and guide you through that process, because it is so confusing. And, like, anybody
Mm.
that's, not a builder, not a designer, or not within the industry, then it can be really overwhelming. So it's
Yeah.
I think that it's a good point to you that, but I think that people really need then to do that homework in the beginning to ensure that they are choosing a building designer or a builder, or whatever way they're entering into that process, that they are finding that person that is really going to hold them by the hand and guide them through, because there is so many different,
Mm.
conflicting words, terminology, and things like that can get, misconstrued, and but just make people feel overwhelmed. So it's great to have people on board then that can show them the way.
I was just gonna say, I think it comes back to the start of, we're not gonna probably realistically change the whole industry in terms of us all getting on the same page with terminology. We can definitely give it a good crack, but as we've seen, between different states, there's different constructions, everybody does things a little bit differently, and I think just individuals will I think marketing probably plays a role as well in people trying to
Mhm.
create new terminologies and new things just to separate themselves from the pack in a means
Yeah,
of getting business, but then it causes confusion and adds to the problem. I don't think we're gonna be putting a stop to that anytime soon. But what we
yeah.
can do is really make sure that we're getting building a really strong relationship with the client at the start and building that level of trust. Because when I reflect back on the projects that we've had the best success with, and it's been, when I say the best success, I mean all of our projects are successful, but the ones that had the cleanest ride, the ones
Yeah.
that seemed almost a little bit more effortless, and there was not much, shit's always gonna come up, right, in renovations particularly, but it's how those things are dealt with. But the projects where there's just been maximum trust between the client and the designer and the builder have been the ones where we've built just such a good amount of trust in the front end that the client
Yeah.
has literally said, "Just get on with it, just do it." And I think we all know that when you've not got a client that's watching over your shoulders every 2 seconds, it does seem to go more effortlessly through the construction process as well. But it's
Mm.
recognizing the role that we play in building that trust in the front end. And I think that's why really, digesting the brief and understanding what the client, I always bring it back to that, right? Regardless of whether you're the designer or the builder, it's so important, those initial stages of really making sure you deeply understand the brief. The design will come, but you need to understand the brief because they need to know that you've got their back. And regardless of what happens or the terminology used or the shit that comes up, if you understand the crux of what's driving this project right from the very start, well, you're naturally just gonna come up with solutions because you
Mm.
really thoroughly, deeply understand what it is the client needs and wants now and into the future. And I think it's a part that's just glossed over so much. People kinda get a loose brief and sort of give them, an idea of what usually they think they want. And then when things come up, it's harder to find solutions because there's not a deeper understanding from what we actually need from the start.
Mm. So, Brahman, actually, that leads in. I was going to go to some of the questions that I had, but I think that this is really good. So, I think that talk us through then. So, a really successful project. So, in the sense of that, it's been the smoothest process for you, for the client, for the builder. Like, talk us through some of the things that contributed to that to be a really smooth process. Like what maybe the client did, what the designer did, and what the builder did, maybe to bring it all together. That it was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, like I just said, starting off, I can talk into our process. It can go
Mm.
both ways. It depends where the clients come from. So it might be that the builders put us in contact with the client, in which case they've probably done their own preliminary discussions with the client, or it might be that the clients come directly to us and then we obviously get our trade teams involved. But regardless, there's been initial conversations and consultations where we've done that deep dive into the brief and then thoroughly explained, client, this is the process. Now, here's how it could vary. Here's how it impacts timelines. Here's how it impacts costs. This is
Mm.
what you can expect, and being really transparent with that in the front end. And then from there, obviously getting people involved. For example, if the client came to us directly, we would then get the builder involved at the earliest opportunity. We'd introduce our construction teams, but we also don't want to get people involved prematurely if we're still in the front end of working through different designs as well. Because the reality is we're all very, very busy. The industry is still in high demand, so we want to protect people's time as well. But once we're at a point where it's of benefit to get third party involvement, we certainly will. And then as soon as we do that, then that obviously establishes trust with that client as well. If we've done a good job in the front end, then it means that we could basically bring in whoever, because we're not going to work with dodgy people, and we've
Mm.
built that trust with the client. So they're happy for our recommendation. And
Mm.
then we are basically become the glue that holds it together in terms of being able to chunk down some of that terminology and explain it in layman's terms they can understand. And then it's just extensions of Bronz DC as to our
Mm.
third parties, our builders, our engineers, our council, the rest of it. And they can see, I think clients can see the relationships between us and our third parties, the way we talk, how much involvement there is the communication. So it just sort of snowballs in a good way because it builds momentum through the build. They can see that it's a great environment, everybody's very trusting and understanding of each other, and they can see how we work together when there is an issue and how
Yeah.
we overcome that. So by the end, you've had a successful project when the client, one, does a glowing review, but, quite often we hear the disappointment when it's over, which sounds ridiculous. At the end of
Yeah.
a massive I mean, they're itching to get into their house. Yes, they're glad the dust is gone, but they're kind of like, "Oh, I'm going to miss having all the trades around. Oh, this has been really great. Oh, can we stay in touch?" That's when
Yeah.
you know you've had a winning project.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. Another question that I did have was in terms of people have these design dreams and then they have budget realities. Is there any way, how do you in Bronze DC, how do you balance that out so that that they're not compromising on too much on either way?
Yeah, early in that consultation and deep dive into the brief, we get a really good understanding of where things fall in the pecking order. When a client comes to us and says, "We want XYZ," my first question, why? And I'm not questioning it like, "Oh, why would you have that?" It's why? Tell me more about that. What's driving the need for this? And sometimes it's, "Oh, well, I saw it on House Rules, or I saw it on the blog, or my friend's cousin's second whatever, did it and they thought it was a good idea." Or it might be, "You know what? Like, we just have so many fights in the morning while the kids are getting ready, and I just want that." So when I'm starting to get those deeper, sort of, I guess, emotional drivers, that's when
Mm.
I know that I've got a legit reason and I can place it in priority. Whereas if I
Yeah.
get a surface level, "Oh, well, I saw it in a magazine once." Okay, cool.
Mm.
But what is it about it that you like? And how do you think it will impact your life? And is it really a priority? Is it just maybe like a wish list? Or because we might be able to come up with something even better. So it's just about really getting into, what's driving the need for the design. And from there, we can give the client information going back. So just so you're aware, if you were to do what you are suggesting, the cost of that is here. But from what you've just told me, it's actually more important for you to have less fights and an easier morning rather than this expensive fixture. We could offer this, it's going to deliver the functionality and it still looks as great, but it's going to be half the price. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
just explaining the consequence of the decisions and finding out, one, what's driving it, giving them the information, this is what it's going to look like, this is what it's going to do to time and cost. How do you feel about it now? Oh,
Yeah.
actually, it's not that important. Okay,
No,
cool. Here's three other solutions that might be more feasible.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know it's like, one of the processes that we also do with you, and that can help with that during that design phase is having at early stages, getting a sort of estimate of where costs can go as well. So, having the concept designs. So it's early in that point where changes are still can still easily be made.
Mhm,
So once you have, you've got your concept design, your first draft or whatever, the builder is then able to look and potentially give an estimate based upon that. And then, the homeowner can see, oh well actually that's actually okay. That's within my price range. We can, go with that. Or actually, oh well, that's a bit too it's out of the range that I'm willing to invest.
mhm,
Okay, let's work again back in with design, see if there's any tweaks that can be made before going down the rabbit hole and proceeding with further time and costs and energy into the next set of drawings that end up might not be feasible. So
Yeah.
it's getting in early and working together with, in our opinion, working with builder, designer at that early stage to
Mm.
work out then that feasibility and whether then it's the ability to proceed to the next steps. So,
That's
and also
critical.
with you've got what you say as well, and it's sort of pinpointing the why. Well, what's the reason for this? And it's easier then at that stage
Mm.
to make changes than getting to construction and then saying, "Oh, actually, I wanna try and save a bit of money here and there," and then, then it's not possible. Do you know what I mean? It is possible, but it can
It'll
cost a
cost you
lot more
more.
money.
A lot more time and money as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Time people, very focused around the money side of it, but I find it's actually the time that
yeah,
seems
that
to be more of a driver in this day and age. Everyone wants everything yesterday, and they will actually pay more money to get it done quicker. I'm sort of
yeah.
seeing a bit of a buying trend, yeah, sort of a consumer trend starting to go that way a little bit. Yeah, you wanna go through the process with eyes wide open as much as you can, so it's about getting the information at the best times to be able to equip yourself. Builders
Mhm,
don't wanna be doing quotes willy-nilly because when things change all the time, which is why I think it's so important to be really thorough with the brief and get the design to a concept that's been thought through thoroughly. I
yeah,
find people that either tackle it by themselves or sort of rush designers or rush builders into the process are only shooting themselves in the foot, because if you've not given that thought, that's when you're going to see the changes come up later as you're
yeah,
realizing things, but it's so
mhm,
much more expensive and time. You lose so much time and money doing that. Whereas, again, coming back to consultation, we always explain the process. This is what's ahead of us. Here's the milestones, here's the checkpoints. At this point, we get an estimate from the builder. It won't be exact. We haven't finished selections yet, but it will tell us the structural stuff. What's the guts of the project going to cost? From here, we now have a reference point. And with that
yeah,
reference point, we can go through and do our selections, knowing where our spend sits and whether we've got a little bit more to splurge with, or maybe we're going to be a little bit selective with our splurging, or we're kind of pushing the brink. So, do we want to revise the concept and just scale that back so that we have a bit more flexibility with selections? Or do we want to go through the rest of the process because we really want what we want with the floor plan? But
mhm,
we know that we're gonna need to be conservative moving forward, and then we can help them with that as well. So, yeah, having that first estimate come through at a point where you have a design that is pretty tight, but it's
mm,
obviously just the finishing touches aren't added on. So really that difference between that first estimate and then the final quote really should be, unless something's come back with engineering, but really just selections
yeah.
prominent. Yeah. That's what we aim for anyway. And we definitely want everything sort of locked in before final builder quote. So we're eliminating client driven variations completely from the scope.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And we know on a personal level how open it is to have, even just from the interior designer thing. So I know Bronwyn does building design, but also the interior design and the benefits that it is, I think that, a thought sometimes, oh, interior designers, that's, only for, some people only get them. But I think that it is a critical part of that process as well. And in terms of what you've just mentioned there, it's like having someone to help you through with that thought process and also it's getting the documentation right. So it makes the building construction process smoother. So it's smoother for the builder, the designer, and the client. But also that it eliminates all of those things during construction that, I can contest that a few projects that we've worked on together, Bronwyn, there's been very little to no variations in some of those jobs. And I mean, it is really not heard of very frequently. Some jobs, you could have 10 to 20 plus variations, and we've had a lot of jobs that we work together that's been very minimal, and it's due to that the thoughts have been put in, the plan has been done, the documentation's done, and that we're not then in that construction phase where the changes are required. So, does that work the same for you, Hugh, over there?
It really just does come down to the time that's spent prior to construction. Really, it also comes down to the questions that are asked before construction as well, because we've had projects like yourselves where there's been 10, 20, 30, 50 variations, and client-driven variations, because the question wasn't put to them
Mm.
before starting any construction works and signing off on things. And, oh no, it's okay. Well, we'll figure that out as we're building. There's no rush to get this stuff done, and we've all heard that. I spent most of my time, even before this, saying
Mm.
no. Make the decision now and think about what's going on, because the time you're going to lose from a change during the project, and then the additional cost because you wanting to add something in, or you want to change something, pull something out, but you want to add this in, or um, all these sorts of things happen. Spending that time beforehand and asking the questions: is this going to affect your life if you have this in here? Is that going to affect your life in a detrimental way, a positive way? How is this going to affect your family life? Is having that window right there going to be good, or would it be better to have a door there?
Mm.
Just from that simple aspect, and a lot of times people are designing homes and they're not being asked these questions, and then we see the flow-on effect of
Mm.
variation, and if you're doing that during construction, what happens? The cost goes up exponentially, because if you're asking for a door to be changed or a window to be moved or something like that because it doesn't suit the, God forbid, bring in any kind of, say, feng shui, or something along those lines, um, the that sort of change while you're in the full midst of construction, or even close to being at the end, the cost just goes up exponentially because things have got to be pulled off, and it's like doing a renovation, and so it can go pear shaped so quickly, and we've seen variations in the order of sort of $100,000 during construction, because someone's like, oh well, we didn't think about it beforehand. Why wasn't
Mm.
somebody asking you that? Why wasn't the designer asking you that beforehand? Why wasn't the
Mm.
engineer saying, if we construct it this way, it's going to cost this much, but if you change it at any point in time, the cost is just going to go through the roof, because we've got to change the way that it's constructed over to this. We've just seen it so many times. So
Mm.
it's spending that time beforehand. It pays dividends asking those questions before anything happens, because we'll just end up with a job that flows smoothly. If there is something that does come up, it's only gonna be minor. It's gonna be
Mm.
small. It's gonna be a color change, not necessarily a wall change, or a move this or move that. It'll just be something
Mm.
small and simple like that.
Mm. Do you think, Hugh, that clients' perspective of what is a quick change and
Mm,
an easy change is so usually far from the reality? Not just there's two perspectives to that. You know, the client might want to chat. I just want to switch out this fixture. Well, great, but we've already done first fix plumbing, so you know they don't understand the construction behind it. They look at
mm,
maybe the cost of the item and go, "Oh, this is about the same price. Let's change it out." But it's like, well, hang on, we now need to come back and rework the plumbing. Heaven forbid the tiles already be on the walls. But also the effect that that then has to the rest of your projects as well. So your variation isn't just paying for that quick little fix. It's
mm,
paying for the time, it's paying for the rescheduling, it's paying for the other jobs that have to get put out, and you're delaying your own project because there are other jobs in the mix. So the plumber might not be able to get back there for another 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden, this builder's taken 3 weeks longer to build my house. Well, you've got to understand the repercussions of what you're asking, and which is
mm,
why it's just so critical to be having all of these conversations and have that all locked away before we sign contracts, which also makes it difficult when there's builders in the industry that actually have their business model based around making money and profit from
mm,
variation fees as
mm.
well. They need to be mindful of that as well.
Sure do, and we see that sort of thing, that business model where it is make money off variations, and so many builders, and the business model and the business case behind that is sort of drilled into people that are in the industry from
Mm.
very early in their career,
Yeah.
and while it's drummed into them, it's always left me with a sickly feeling in my stomach whenever I've heard, "Oh, you basically go in low and you vary everything."
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's a disgusting habit. Like,
Oh.
I feel if the industry's gotten a bad name, it's gotten from that sort of behavior,
Yeah.
Mm.
and the
Project
flow-on
builders are
effect of that.
absolutely. I mean, project builders are notorious for it. Do you see it much in the custom space?
Uh, Look, I have. mainly because people get into the custom space from working with the project builders,
Yeah,
and so they
yeah.
take the business model
They
that
bring
they've
that
got and
mentality.
bring it over.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I was gonna say I've actually seen that, play out in selections as well, just
Mm,
sidestep, uh, where the project builder mentality has been brought into the custom build realm, and
Mm.
so clients, when they're building a custom home, are under the impression they can have whatever they want because they can, because it's custom.
mm,
But when builders are setting their preliminary pricing off a builder or a project builder model, then the builder's setting themselves up to disappoint the client, or to, you're lowballing the project right from the start, knowing that you need to be setting that bar higher, or your allowances need to be higher, because chances are they're not going to be choosing from the builder's range. They're going to be choosing bespoke products and fixtures. So why would you even? It just doesn't make sense to me that we're now trying to follow project builder protocol
mm.
for a custom build.
'Cause it's the only I see it as because they've sort of grown up with it,
Mm,
they see that as the easy way to go, and when they're costing out the projects, they go, "Oh, well, the basic builder's range, it's just chrome fittings, it's nothing special or anything like that."
yeah,
The the chrome fittings, yeah, they're cheap. They're
yeah.
cheap and readily accessible, so that and that's just using one example, but
Yeah.
as soon as you step away from that,
Mm,
and like we had, what was it? There was a bronze and the gunmetal and all these
mm,
sorts of types of fittings, and this goes back to that change, when somebody's asking for a change with, God forbid, they wanna change a flick mixer in a bathroom. um, "Oh, well, we wanna go from that one to this different style, and this one looks a little bit better," or something like that. Even when you're costing it, it's 5 to 6 times the amount
mm,
of that chrome fitting.
yeah,
There's also the delay in getting the product, which
mhm,
can be anywhere from to 15 weeks, depending on the
yeah,
product and their product run, because the suppliers only do that run every 3 months.
yeah,
And so you've got to place your order, and you're not
mm,
gonna get it for 3 months,
Yeah,
minimum.
second order.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so they're not just producing them over and over and over again, because
yeah,
they set up their lines to do one color, essentially, every 3 months. So they'll do gunmetal
mm,
for 1 week, they'll do bronze for 1 week, and then they'll do, gold, and then they'll do whatever other colors they've got in their selection. Um, and so you just don't know, and that's where the time can be added on, and when you're going through a
mm,
project and you're explaining, "This is the delay, this is the delay, we can't do anything if you wanna go down that road. We need that selection 3 months before we start construction, otherwise we won't get it."
Yeah, in time.
And that
yeah,
goes into the whole renovation space is
mm,
we'll be up against the wall if you don't make that selection
mm.
beforehand.
Yeah.
And here's the thing though, the client doesn't know that. So the client doesn't know what
Mm,
they don't know. So then who's responsible for telling
Mm.
them? Now there's a lot of moving parts in a build. So is the builder going to remember to think of all of this stuff at the start? This is why we exist.
Absolutely.
Designers, I mean, that I see my job as giving the client information,
Mhm.
so that I'm not there to push my own agenda and my own design style. It's their house. We help guide them through that. But it's about getting the information to them so they know in the front end, this is the stuff I need to decide now. This is the stuff that maybe isn't as important, and we can leave that till a little bit later in the process. But these are the critical things. So when we do the design, it's like, okay, structure, big stuff. Let's get that in. Okay, now, and we've got a very specific order in which we work through our
Mm.
selections, and the jobs, contrary to what we were
mm,
saying before, Lou, about how do the good jobs
Yeah.
go? The bad jobs, the ones that no one enjoys and everybody ends up resenting, and it's just a nightmare from start to finish, are the ones where the clients start to go away from
Mm.
process. We want to do this now. We want to do that now. It just turns into a
mm.
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah, and gets drawn out and everybody gets frustrated and yeah. What do you see now in terms of trends and well, it's is it a trend or is it just a new age? And it's in terms of sustainability and energy efficient design. What are you seeing now in regards to that?
Not as much as I'd like to be
Mm.
seen. I think it's still quite a slow moving
Mhm.
beast, and I think it's still quite surface level. Um, It's particularly on the interior
Yeah,
landscape. I think it's still seen as quite a niche-y upper market, to be bringing in sustainable materials unless something's been given, a bit of extra attention to, for example, silicosis in engineered
yeah,
stone. But in terms of building design, I don't know too many building designers and architects that are not considering energy efficiency and sustainability when they're doing
yeah,
designs now. So it's great. We're definitely seeing a movement. Definitely over in the east, it's huge. We're a little bit behind the eight ball over here in WA, both with council compliance and just general
yeah.
practice. Which doesn't make sense to me because we're in like one of the the hottest part of Australia, just about. Certainly, this summer has proven that, and I think we can be doing it a lot
Mm,
better. So those that are in the game, like yourselves at
mhm.
Fairway, definitely are front runners in that field. Because again, if we are breaking down the brief and finding out what's important for the client, and they're going to be in a house long term, this is stuff you want to be considering. So it comes down to the designer to be explaining the benefits of certain construction methods and design to be able to get longevity out of the
Yeah,
home. So, yeah, to answer your question, I'm not seeing too much big movements, but I am
yeah.
seeing some
But
passive
it's
movement
still,
towards
yeah,
passive
it's still
growth. Yeah.
it's moving in right direction. But yeah,
Mm,
it's still very slow to go. But yeah, at least hopefully it'll gather a little bit more momentum as more and more people become aware and are educated upon it as well, like through yourself.
mm.
So anything else for today? And I think that I think it's been really amazing having you on the podcast today, Bronwyn. We've got, a lot of information that hopefully will help educate some homeowners that are listening. Anything else that you want to throw out there? If any advice for anybody that's about to start on that building renovation journey that you would like to share?
It can look like an outlay, and I'd even go as far as saying some people might perceive it as an unnecessary outlay, but every single client we've had that have benefited from the designer builder triangle with the homeowner in that, making up that
Mm.
3, has turned around and gone, "We are so glad we did it this way because we would have got lost at said part,
Mhm.
somewhere along the process." So, yeah, certainly invest in I could sit back and look at the projects and the investment people have spent on design services in the front end has been nothing compared to how much we've actually saved them in the back end because we've made well-informed decisions in the front end, whether that be with the building design or the interiors. So, yeah, it is an investment, and it's one that will actually save you time and money in the long run. So that's would be my advice.
Thanks so much, Brahman, for today. It's been awesome to have you, and yeah, we'd love
Thank
to
you.
have you back at some stage in the future. And
Of course.
who knows what we'll be talking about then. But thanks again, and we'll chat to you very soon. Thanks you as well.
Thanks for tuning in to Builders Beyond Borders. If today's episode helped you feel more prepared, clearer, or more confident, share it with a mate who's planning their own build or reno. Got a question about building, renovating, or working with tradies? Send it our way. We might cover it in a future episode. And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss the real stories, practical tips, and builder insights we've got coming your way. Everything shared on this podcast is based on our experiences and those of our guests. It's general info only. Any reliance on the information provided is done at your own risk.